I had a bullet in the chamber and I had my finger on the trigger. I had a rush come over my body that I'd never felt before. And I carefully set the gun down and I committed to myself and to God in that moment that I would extract the lessons that led to that point of putting that gun in my mouth. Apply those lessons in my life and to share them with as many people as I possibly can. And that's the inspiration behind writing What We're Worth, because I had tied my worth as an individual to my financial balance sheet. And when it went to a negative, not just a lower number, but when it went to a negative, I felt worthless, of no worth. And I wasn't even thinking about this adjoining balance sheet that I share in my book, What We're Worth, that I call a human life value balance sheet. And there's assets, Ben, and there's liabilities on the human life value balance sheet. Some of those assets are, like our knowledge, our experiences, a degree we may have from school, relationships. Relationships are a line item on our human life value balance sheet. And I'd forgotten all of that. I was clouded. I couldn't even think straight. I wasn't even thinking about my human life value balance sheet. Ben, our human life value balance sheet is the source and the creator of our property value in our life. That room you're in, this home office I'm in, the house that I'm in, has no value whatsoever until you or I or another human gives it value. So people are the true assets, things are not. Human life value is the source and creator of all property value. So it's a simple formula. If we want to create more property value, more cash assets, real estate, big business, whatever, we must first increase our mental capital, which is our human life value. So I look at both balance sheets today. That's what allowed me to pull back out of the hole, to sober up, to move back in with my wife and kids, to be able to sit outside the hospital room door and listen as our grandson was born, and more recently our granddaughter, and to be able to share and feel in those emotions and to be able to actually be present in life. And that ability to focus on our human life value assets, the intrinsic self-worth items of life, allowed me to not only move back in with my family and to recreate that bond with my wife and family again, but to be able to earn back all that money that I had lost and helping clients with that perspective.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, Michael. That's intensely powerful. I'm curious, when you made that internal decision, what were the actions that you took initially, from obviously taking the gun out of your mouth? What was the actions that you took immediately to start to regain back? The word that keeps popping into my head is trust. And it was almost immediately I was like, well, maybe it was, how did you earn back the trust of like your family, right? Your friends, your relationships. But I actually think that I'm really curious, how did you actually take the steps for you to learn back the trust of yourself, right? Because you had to actually, that trust had to be given back first to the number one fan you had, right? Which was yourself.
Yeah. Great question. It's a series of a lot of different things, but if I had to sum it up, and I continue to do this to this day, and I write about it in the end of what we're worth. Number one, I started writing pen with paper, got my journal right here in front of me, pen and paper, what I'm grateful for, what I celebrate and appreciate in my life, more a gratitude journal. And back then it was one day at a time. And just today, I'd wake up in the morning and write, God, I'm grateful to be alive. Thank you for this gift of life. I'm alive. In 2006, we just had the anniversary, June 8th of 2006, and Ray and Les, that were Garrett Gunnarsson and I's original business partners, they flew from northern Utah to southern Utah, where I live, and we did a seminar that night, and they hopped back on this small turboprop 4-seater airplane that we just bought a 6th share into, and they flew back to northern Utah. And on their final approach into the runway, they crashed and died. The pilot, Blaine, and Ray and Les, Garrett and I's original business partners. And I got the first phone call. I called Garrett. I woke him up, told him what had happened. And then I called Ray and Les's wives, Tina and Danita, and woke them up and told them what had happened. So I think about that often. That was 2006, but I'm alive. Ben, you're alive. People listen to this, they're alive. I'm grateful for the gift of life. So I started focusing on gratitude and just the small things. And in the beginning, it was, I'm alive. And then it's, I'm grateful for my health, mental and physical. I'm grateful for my wife, Wendy, our love for each other. And so I had to start feeding that nourishment into myself for exactly what you just said, Ben. I had to believe that about myself again. I started listing assets on my human life value balance sheet, those things that I was grateful for. Then I listed liabilities. And some of those liabilities, limiting mindset, scarcity thinking, fear, doubt, worry, stories that I was telling myself and believing. And I love the work of Byron Katie. Are you familiar with Byron Katie at all?
Yeah. Yes. High level. Yes. Yeah. But share what did you take from that? Because I think the audience, whether they have or aren't, I think could take a lot from that.
Byron Katie wrote a book. She has several books out. One of her books is Loving What Is. And you can, anybody can go to The Work, THEWORK, thework.com, and listen to her do the work to assist people with the stories that we tell ourselves. And she has a worksheet in there that you can take a thought or a story about it yourself. So I started doing that work. I started questioning my thoughts. I'm not worthy. Is that true? Byron Katie would ask me, is that true? And then I would take it down through a series of questions. I'd be like, yes, I am worthy, actually. But I was telling myself a story deep down that I wasn't worthy because I should have known better. And why did I take that risk? And I thought I was investing, but I was really gambling. And so I started doing the work on my thoughts and the stories that I was telling myself. And Byron Katie assisted me a lot with that. And then Garrett Gunderson assisted me a lot with that. We sat down with each other. Another mentor of mine is Garrett White, and he was assisting me with my thoughts and stories that I was telling myself. And I'll never forget Garrett Gunderson saying to me, Michael, you can choose to leverage your past to create moving forward. And so, and Ben, I think you said this in the beginning when we were in the green room talking together. You're like, no, if we fail at something, we can actually extract. My version of what you said is if we fail at something, we can extract a lesson from that, apply that in our life. And then my version of that is share that lesson with as many people as you possibly can. And that's why I wrote the book, What We're Worth. That's why I love sharing with other people. And I appreciate the opportunity of being on here, because I don't want people to ever, ever, ever have to experience what I did that night on the bathroom floor, questioning life itself over finances and money.
Well, I can tell you for one, I mean, we've just been on this podcast here for about 17 minutes. And I, for one, am super grateful because there's so much to unpack in what you actually just talked about, like gratitude. I think gratitude is like the byproduct of like the most powerful energy source there is, which is love. Which I think is amazing. And I think that you've hit on something. And for me, it was, the moment, we had to remove the breathing tube from like our son when he was 16 days old, that I realized that there's a big difference between being alive and living. And you actually just gave me some clarity. And the fact is, I think that when people think that they've had success and they look at their net worth statement and they go, ooh, look how successful I am. Yet I think inside that most people, when they look at that, it's like an empty feeling. I was listening to a speaker, and it was interesting. He'd gone twice. I think his name is Jamie Clark, and he had gone to Mount Everest. And the first time I'm hearing this presentation, he's talking about this incredible moment that he's standing at the top of Mount Everest. And he's on top of this chair, his arms are up, and you're there with him for that moment, and you think that, wow, that's amazing. See him 3 years later. He decides to go back again, summit Mount Everest, and you know what's interesting? At the time, at that point, he'd gotten married, had a couple kids, and you know, his thought the next time he was standing at the top of that mountain is he was going, "What am I doing here? Like, what am I doing here? Like, what a selfish aim." And so when I think about this idea of being alive or living, I think that the net worth side of us is being alive, right? It's a representation, right? Maybe of like the man-made alive, but the living aspect of it, this human life value balance sheet, I think is so incredibly just so powerful because it really is the representation. I like to bike, and oftentimes we'll be biking. We do 100-mile day in a different state every single year, group of guys, and inevitably we go past out in the middle of nowhere these cemeteries, and we'll stop there, and you're walking there, and you realize, and you look at the epitaphs that are on there, and none of them are, 8-figure exit, 9-figure exit. It's the beloved, like caring, all of these actually human life value characteristics. But I think the last thing I'm taking from this, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, Michael, is this idea of narratives and stories and words and the power that we give them. And in using like the financial terminology, this is almost like the asset allocation mix. These narratives and these stories that we tell ourselves. And I'm really curious how that lands for you, because it seems like, like like in gratitude, right? How much is self-awareness, excavation, self-discovery versus avoidance, denial, buying into narratives that are self-defeating. I mean, how's that hit you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I look at both balance sheets on a daily basis, and I encourage my clients to also, and anybody listening to this, be very clear. Most of our entrepreneurs and business owners have a property value balance sheet. They have assets and they have liabilities on, and assets minus liabilities equal to equity in their property value balance sheet. But now be more aware than ever before of your human life value balance sheet and assets and liabilities on that. Are you positive or negative with that? And it's not right or wrong. It's either working or not working. But fall in love with this life of, Dan Sullivan talks about this, and I believe it's Dan Sullivan, coach, and you, Ben, let me know. This, life of lifelong learning, to just commit to this, because when any of us commit to learning and growing within ourselves, we're fulfilled at a deep level. When we're striving towards something, it fulfills us to strive towards something, and it challenges us, and that challenges feeds us. And so why would we ever stop that? And then my version of that is, if we stop that growing, whether it's personally or professionally, we don't feel worthy of the results that we've already created in our life. To back up this life of lifelong learning. So I look at both balance sheets, but I look at my property value balance sheet first, the intrinsic self-worth items of life. And when you're sharing, Ben, I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that they're not mutually exclusive. Having property value and human life value, in fact, why not believe the story that as we increase our human life value, we'll significantly increase our property value? And then what are we doing with our property value assets, and how are we serving and creating more as a result, not only in our own life, but for other people? And it's not selfishness, it's self-interest. Because again, when I'm fulfilled, when I see myself as the number one asset, then if my cup's full, I actually have something to pour from it. And so again, look at both balance sheets, but pay more attention to the human life value balance sheet because of the depth of fulfillment that provides for us and what it creates at a higher level for those around us.
Yeah. Two things from there. I love, and I think you're kind of talking about this, is like fall in love with the process. I mean, you look at the most successful programs like Nick Saban, right? He goes, be where your feet are at, like be about the process. Like the Patriot Way was about the process. And I love this idea. It's the conversation I have with my daughter. I'm like, I don't care about the results. I mean, I truly don't. Like she's a runner, but I want her to fall in love with the process, because it's in the process is like where you have to be present for the process. And so I absolutely love that. And it is interesting that that there is the chicken or the egg. And what we've found in our companies, that when we've invested into people personally, the professional always follows. And for ourselves, when we actually invest into ourselves in the excavation, inevitably a more grateful version of ourselves show up, and therefore it's like we have more capacity, which I think is like just so incredible. And Dan Sullivan has lately been talking about, like, stop trying to be there, be here. Because when you're here is already a previous version of yourselves there. And so when you're here, and I liked your imagery of like saying pouring, you have more to pour out because you're expanding, rather than being like, my happiness is when I get there. It's you're here. Michael, you also talk about liabilities. What are the liabilities when you look at the HLV balance sheet?
I'm not worthy. I'm not loved. And I think it was Jay Jacobs that talked about doing some plant medicine experiences.
Yes.
And I was going to reach out to him because he said something about having it being recorded in his medicine journey experiences, and then he would transcribe it. And I took my wife and I actually, and I'm grateful that my wife and I took it on together. We had some of those similar experiences 5-6 years ago. And so it's this progression and continuing to peel back the layers within myself. And we've done it together as a couple also, but we had a similar experience that Jay talked about in one of your previous episodes. And it's that discovery within myself. And I went all the way back to my childhood and different opinions and thoughts and stories that I started telling myself when I was younger that I've carried up through the rest of my life. And one of those discoveries and one of those experiences was that I was laying in bed as a 5-year-old boy, and I didn't have any conscious memory of this until I went into this medicine experience. And my wife and I went to Peru and celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary, doing 4 nights of ayahuasca then. But in one of these medicine experiences, we can talk about that or not talk about that. Yeah. It seems like Ben, weren't you saying that you had not done it, but you're curious about it and had a few guests on?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I haven't done it. I'm curious about it. So share what it is in terms about this experience. And then I want to hear about your experience and what led you to even want to have that experience. So let's explore this.
So this 5-year-old boy, I woke up, I remember having this nightmare as a 5-year-old boy. And I got up at the edge of my bed, and I'm terrified because I was in this vehicle with my family and we were falling off a cliff. And before we hit the ground, I woke up. So it was this intense fear within myself. It was a nightmare. Imagine you're 5 years old and you feel like you're going to die. I got up and I went over to the doorway in my bedroom and I sat down and I looked down the long hallway of the home that I grew up in. And at the end of the hallway was my parents' door to their room, and it was shut. And I sat down and I didn't go down to their bedroom, and I told myself this story. I can't trust my parents. And if I can't trust them, I can't trust anybody else, including myself. And I had no conscious memory of this as an adult until I had this medicine experience. And then I relived this experience as a 5-year-old boy, telling myself this story. And then I continued to validate that story throughout my professional adult life, personally and professionally, by finding other people in business that would validate that I couldn't trust them. And it came down to me trusting myself. My parents I love them for many different reasons, but I had to set guardrails in my adult life with my parents to be able to maintain even some sort of a healthy relationship. And I'm, again, grateful for the things that they did provide and teach me. And I love them. But I'm also clear that I had to do this work on myself. And I had to actually allow myself to feel this love for myself and provide that for myself. My wife's always provided that for me, but I had a block mentally. I didn't know I had the block, but I had a block up with 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door in my marriage. And I wasn't completely committed. So through this medicine work, it's allowed me to commit full on with her. And then, but that had to do with me doing the work for myself. I had to commit to myself. And so it's like open up this whole new world for myself and in life and in business and communication and writing the book. And I haven't shared this yet on a podcast, Ben, but I'm going to do it right now. When you read What We're Worth, there's a story in there. There's a fictional character named David Shallcross, and David goes out into the Mojave Desert to take his life, and he's unsuccessful. But he runs out of gas and he's dehydrated. He has no water, and he's walking through the Mojave Desert of California, and he starts hallucinating as a result of dehydration. And his baseball coach comes to him and starts dropping these bombs and these life lessons on him. But it's a hallucination of his old baseball coach, but it helps give him the perspective of life. And those are many of my experiences that I gained in my medicine experiences. And that's how I put it into the book. So people reading the book won't know that it were medicine experiences that I had as a result of those lessons in the book. But that's where they came from for me. So when you talk about liabilities on the human life value balance sheet, medicine work, Byron Katie, continuing to question my thoughts. I use an app from my good friend Garrett White. I have 2 Garretts in my life, Garrett Gunderson and Garrett White. And Garrett White runs a company called Wake Up Warrior. And there's an app that he created that you ask yourself all these questions to peel down the truth behind it. And so that's been my discovery. And I still write on a daily basis things that I'm grateful for. But I am conscious of the liabilities on the human life value balance sheet. And my measurement isn't right or wrong. It's either working or not working. It's either moving me closer to happiness or further away in my life. So now I have my own measurement as a result of believing in myself again. And I want everybody to take back their own life versus just give it away so freely to everybody else. I want them to take back control of their own life, because once they do that, they'll actually have more to give to others, just like we talked about before.
Yeah, so many questions. So many questions. Can you talk? I'll start here. I think. Can you talk about, with Byron and with Garrett, what are the 3 most common questions that you have found so effective that if the audience listening today just took these 3 questions and said, if I just start asking these every day and answering them as honestly as I'm allowing myself to be, what would those 3 questions be that you think would have the greatest impact? Because you've clearly have had a lot of journey of asking yourself questions that maybe you're honest or not honest about. My guess is today you're super honest about it because you find the benefit in there. But what are those 3 that if you could tell our audience today, hey, if you just start answering these 3 questions, this would be a great start?
You can download this worksheet from thework.com, and it gives you all these questions. And the question number 1 is it true? Is it true? I'm not worthy. I'm not loved. Those are like some of if you peel down the layers of the onion, you get down to the core of, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel loved. Those are some of the deep rooted ones, but it could start of, oh, I'm a failure, or I failed at that, or I'm no good at this. Is that true? Is that absolutely true? How can I know for a fact that that's true, that I'm a failure? So if we ask ourselves, if we'll pause and give ourselves time to ask ourselves those questions, and I'm glad you brought this up. Is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? And just those two questions alone to pause and ask ourselves. And then the third question is there any part of my history in my life where that wasn't true? Can I find any evidence in my life where I actually succeeded at something? And if we'll pause and slow down and get present and allow the noise to slow down, because the noise is all this, I'm not worthy, I'm a failure. And then it's just this deep rabbit hole that we go down. But if we'll start practicing slowing down and pausing and ask ourselves those questions, is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? Is there any evidence of my past where that wasn't true? We'll find that evidence. And then we can start building on that. And 99.9% of the time, it's not true. But we tell ourselves that story, and then we believe it, and all of our actions and results in our life are affected as a result of that story.
One of the things you just said that I think is so profound is this idea of we have all of this noise coming at us. And yesterday I was had a guest on. He was talking about, especially with AI, that there's all of this noise, and AI creates a lot of noise, but very few like actual signal. And what I'm actually hearing from you, these questions allow you to go, what's actually signal and what's actually noise? My question to you is, where is the genesis of almost all of this noise? Because we all have it. As one of my guests, Joey Klein, said, there's the ghost in the machine. Like, where, I mean, you've obviously, and obviously, I'm sure there's multiple areas of the genesis of this, but you've obviously, I think, in an incredible way, and what a gift to our audience, because most people aren't willing to share this, their journey, but two, willing to go on the journey. Where do you think the genesis of almost all of our noise comes from?
Such a great question. And I immediately think of the book, The Road Less Stupid, Keith Cunningham. Have you heard of that one?
I have, but I haven't read it.
Oh my gosh. I have it on audio and I can only get like 10 minutes into it because he asks all these questions. But the premise of him asking these questions is he's a big proponent of thinking time. There's all sorts of versions of it. I like doing it first thing in the morning. Nobody else is up in the house. It's calm. I'm drinking my coffee. It's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm going through and on the app, and I'm asking myself these questions, and I'm journaling, and I'm writing, and it's thinking time. And the medicine experiences allowed me to like slow the noise down and get into a deep meditative state. That's when I talk about medicine experiences, that's what it does for me. It's what it does for a lot of other people that I know also. And that's why I'd be curious to talk to Jay about it. But it puts me into this deep meditative state. And we can do that through breathing and meditation here at the house. But it gets me into this deep meditative state and start to slow down that noise and eliminate that noise to where I'm just have no thought. There's no thought going on in my head. And then I'm able to do that self-discovery. And it's a practice. It's just like lifting weights or, road biking. I love to road bike too. And, you first get on, you've never been on a road bike and you can maybe go 10, 15 miles like, oh my hell, my sit bones and, oh, it's all this and I'm breathing hard. But then next thing you know, you get months and months into it and you're like 50, 60 miles. Yeah, no problem. 90 miles, let's do it. And you start getting that runner's high cycling. You have to build up to that. And that's the same with this in our life. But all that noise for me came from outside influences. And for me, the big ones are the government, financial institutions, news media, and their agendas that are so prolific. Because if we don't create our own agenda, somebody else has an agenda for us. And so I love asking people these questions. What do you want? Why do you want it? Just gaining clarity around what we want in our life. And Dan Sullivan has a great little book. He writes all these quarterly books, Wanting What You Want. Are you familiar with that one, Ben? Wanting What You Want?
I have, in the last 10 years, I have read that 7 times because it takes less than an hour to read. but I've read it because every single time my different nuance of who I am and who I'm becoming looks at it a little bit differently, because it asks you that, in essence, it asks you the same question: what do you want and why do you want it? And the permission to go, and that's enough.
Yep. Yep. And it's okay to want what you want.
Yes.
Because when we have the background of dollars follow value, and I seek to create value first, the money speech and Atlas Shrugged from Francisco de Anconio, the famous money speech in there, and I hand that out to my clients to read. It's okay to want what you want, because what's behind that is the intent of, I'm going to create value first and dollars follow that value. So if I'm always leading with that mindset of how can I create value for someone that I'm in front of, and it comes down to assisting them in gaining clarity around what they want and why they want it. Most people don't know. So they're letting the government, they're letting news media, they're letting religions just run their life for them, and they're not clear around what they really want for themselves. So it's gaining clarity around that first.
Yeah, not to sound all matrixy or anything like that, but it's almost like those are different programs. It's like you can buy into OS, right? You can buy in Windows. You remember when you buy like different versions of Windows 98, right? It's the days when you'd buy software and you could hang out for 10 years before you go to the next one. That was my dad, by the way. He was like, how long can I stretch this out? I think, can you talk a little bit more about like how government and religion, do you think, because I'm really curious, the media or financial institutions, like I'm familiar with like media, right? Because you see it, social media, you see it, but can you talk a little bit about how you have seen or even experienced yourself in this noise echo chamber with government and those types of programs?
It's, for me, it's around raising my awareness around all of this, and my awareness that there is a noise, that there is an outside agenda. And for me, that the way I see it is, it's all about control. They want to control us, not only our mindsets, but our money. And so they use fear, doubt, and worry tactics. So I love Peter Diamandis in Abundance 360, because we could focus on all the fear, doubt, and worry and the doom and gloom and all the negative stuff. And if we go down that rabbit hole, we'll find unlimited amounts of fear, doubt, and worry. But we can also go, and that's the scarcity thinking, but we could also go down the rabbit hole of abundance and prosperity and all the innovations, and AI is creating all these health things, and people are living longer, and I'm going to live till I'm 140, and I want to live this long, healthy life, and these advancements in science and health and peptides and all these things that we can do for our body and for ourselves that are just these amazing discoveries. There's actually more of that. So it's what are we seeking? And I believe the government wants to control more, because Ben, you and I, your listeners, we're not the masses. We're not the masses. And so we're not plugged into all that noise as much as the masses are. And so and it's not like we've arrived anywhere. I haven't arrived anywhere. I have that arrival syndrome going on, and I'm not better than anybody else, but I'm on this path and this pursuit of raising my personal awareness, my consciousness, to become aware that there is this noise and this narrative of control. And for the masses, they maybe they need that in their life to help them survive. I think it's even more of a challenge, but a greater opportunity to take life on itself. And I used to belong to a religious organization here in Utah, where I lost all that money. My wife and I started questioning. We're very spiritual, but we're not religious. And we've been able to find that again in our lives. And it's more about personal responsibility and accountability would be the values that I would attribute to that. So anybody that wants to be more self-aware and is seeking that in their life, there's more accountability, there's more self-awareness that must be taken on as a result to have that in your life. If not, all these other things will have an agenda for you.
Yeah. Did you watch the movie 13 Days about the Benghazi?
Nope.
Fantastic movie.
Is that the Netflix?
Yeah, I think so. It was an incredible. I'm a big in my free time. I love reading like spy novels, assassin novels. Like that's how I don't think entrepreneurial. Allow me to just kind of to just kind of tune it out. But there was a part in there where one of the characters, I think it was the character's name in there, playing a real life, like playing a real life human and there was the Tonto, and obviously it's Hollywoodized, but he says all the heavens and hells are within us. And I like what you're actually talking about, that there's a level of agency and personal like responsibility and accountability to be able to, like, you can actually raise your awareness and self-awareness and accountability, or you can allow it, I think, to sink and actually outsource that to other things or organizations about, well, what do you want? What should my awareness be? What should my accountability be? And I love that, because I think you're right. The general, I think people who are listening to this are growth minded individuals, even if they're not entrepreneurs, they're growth minded individuals, which I personally love. So, well, I think that is really interesting when you talk about like the noise. Is that um, one of my guests, Eric Solbakken, talked about how he believes that the we've all had the divine spark put within us, and it's just, and I had this imagery when he and I were talking, is that we have all of this excavation to free up that internal light, that internal energy, that internal flame that that God put within us. And so I love the thank you for sharing that, Genesis. One of the other things you talked about, Michael, is commitment. I had to relearn to make a commitment to myself, commitment to my wife. And it sounds really simple. It's like, well, I'm going to make a commitment, but I don't think it's as simple as just saying I'm going to make a commitment. Can you break down, like, what does a commitment mean to you, and how did you actually make the commitment to yourself, and how does that show up every single day? And then I think a follow on to that was, how do you make commitments to others, right? The ones that are in your circle, the sphere that you want to share your self awareness and accountability with, right? How do you do that? Like, for example, Wendy. I'm really curious, because when you said that, I was like, ooh, commitment. It's a thing that people like to talk about, especially around New Year's Eve, right? New Year's resolutions, commitments, and for some reason, 98% of them seem to like not make it past February.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes down to the clarity around what I want and why I want it in my life, and having this big vision. My wife saw me right now, or my son or our daughter, or my son-in-law, and I'm putting my hand up here and I'm looking up at this hand. All this up here is the big vision of what I want and what we want as a family. And our Snapchat for our family, which includes our son, daughter, son-in-law, my wife and I, it's called the Wolf Pack. And we're the wolf pack. We run together. We stay together. We may go away for a while, but we'll always come back together. And we love and trust one another. And we'll always be there for each other. And that's the wolf pack. And so it's this clarity for me gaining clarity about what I want. What I want is Michael Isom. And then gaining that clarity with my wife about what we want together as a couple. And so because we're clear around what we want and we're committed to that, then everything else boils down to that point. Bo Eason assisted me with this big vision of what's possible in our life and having this dream. He talks about a dream, and for me, that's what I want. This purpose in my life, what we're driving towards, on our family values. That's why one of the many reasons why Gary Gunnarsson and I wrote What Would the Rockefellers Do? Because it's around family values, having a family constitution, these things these intrinsic self-worth items of life, this human life value balance sheet. So it's gaining clarity around this human life value balance sheet. We'll take it back to that, Ben, and all the assets on it, the liabilities, but all those things that we want are assets on the human life value balance sheet. So it's this clarity. And it's not this arrival. It changes. As I mature, the core values stay the same, but the different things in life that we want to create and experience together, those continue to evolve as we continue to evolve as a couple. So that commitment is derived out of clarity from what I really want and what we want as a couple together. And so it's having that conversation together as a couple. And here's one big learning tool. So my wife and I separated for 45 days when she left with her family. We did get back together. Thank God I sobered up and we started going to work on myself. But we started a process called 5 and 3. 5 and 3. And it's a listening process. So we would sit down. We had a dear friend share this with us to help rebuild trust and commitment to each other in our life. 5 and 3. We would sit down. We would set a timer on the iPhone. She would talk for 5 minutes. I would listen for 5 minutes intently. The timer would go off. She would stop and she could share whatever she wanted to. I'm not there to fix anything. So I can take that pressure off of myself thinking I got to fix something. I'm listening. And then I have 3 minutes, set a timer, 3 minutes to restate what I heard her say. So 5 minutes she shares, 3 minutes, I'm just restating what I heard her say. And that started building trust between us. That started allowing us to discover more of what we wanted and the commitment around that. But it's just a form of listening. And that was a very powerful thing that we still to this day, besides having a positive focus together, that we'll do to be deliberate about listening and being heard by our trusted spouse.
And how often are you doing this per week?
In the beginning, we did it nightly. This was in 2010. And now we do it at least every week.
Wow. And what have you found? Like, how has your relationship changed and evolved, like gotten richer? I mean, I'm going to use the word richer when we talk about human life value, right? How has your balance sheet gotten richer with your wife by doing that?
And what popped into my mind, Ben, was depth. We just have so much more depth to our life. She's always been all in. I wasn't all in. I had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, as I said earlier. Now we're both. I'm all in, and the depth to our life, the quality of our life, the shit still comes up. Stuff still comes at us as a couple, but it's different today. It's different as a result of my own commitment to myself, which then allowed me to bring commitment to our marriage and then to our family. But again, it had to start with me. I'm the number one asset. I had to take care of myself. I had to get healthy. I had to, do this work on myself before I could then bring it into our relationship.
I think that's so powerful. You had to first have the commitment to yourself before you can give commitment to anybody else. Wow. That is amazing. So if someone's listening to you and being like, maybe it resonates the fact that they're like, I'm in, but like I'm sort of like I'm kind of half in, kind of half out. Can you give an example of like how that would maybe feel like when the shit is coming at you guys as a couple, the pre-Michael, like the pre in terms of the live Michael versus the living Michael, right? Using my Benny terms, right? Like, how would you have experienced it and how would you have reacted versus how that happens today?
I put the blame on everyone else. I was a victim. When I lost all that money, I was a victim in the beginning. The 3 years that I didn't work, I lost the money at the end of 2007 when all that wore the wire for the epi, all that happened at the end of 2007. 2008, 2009, those 2 years and a little bit into 2010, I didn't work. I lived off of some savings. Thank God I had some savings that we lived off of. But I was a mess. And it's because I didn't see myself as the problem. Therefore, I couldn't see myself as the solution. So when I started taking ownership versus being a victim, then I took on that ownership and I saw myself as the problem. And that opened up my ability to then see myself as the solution. And a whole new world opened up. So the old Michael, the new Michael, I'm the problem, but good news, I'm the solution also.
That is awesome. And it was just that simple switch of being like, everyone else is the problem.
Pointing the finger.
I'm curious to see or to hear from you you obviously, in addition to making a commitment to yourself and continue to have your own self-awareness, I feel like what also has gotten excavated, not only yourself, but with you and Wendy, is principles and core values that are important to you, right? These boundaries, right? You talked about with your parents, you had to set some healthy boundaries. And I think with life, that's what principles and core values are, is a boundary setting so that we can get what we want because we just want it. I'm curious, what core values and principles do you think echoed from your own experience, right? I mean, your kids obviously had a front row seat to watching this meltdown and then watching you like solidify down there and then having to watch you kind of cut away the kind of the sharp edges and then start to mold and rebuild and resculpt into the dad that it sounds like. I mean, as a wolf pack, right? In a wolf pack, there's an alpha and omega, and I'm guessing that you're leading as like the alpha. What core values and principles did you see come out of that you now see within your kids?
Yeah. Thank you. And we've had fun discovering this together as a family and then sharing those with each other. We just in the last year went through another process for our estate planning to hone in on our top 5 core values. And number 1 is health. And it's not just physical health, it's mental health being a top core value for us as a family, for our wolf pack. And then number 2 would be accountability. And it sounds, accountability. Yeah, you got to be accountable. No, it's what it means and the stories and the application of being accountable and not being a victim, but being accountable for our individual lives. And again, it starts with us as an individual. And then once we have that within ourselves, we can then offer that to others. Self-awareness is another really big one for our family. And we talk about it. We were just on this family vacation to Yosemite the last few days, my wife and I and our son, and doing these long hikes. And we talked about those core values of our family of accountability and self-awareness and health and how that plays out. We have other ones like now we have ones like longevity that just came up because we're excited about our life. We're clear about what we want and why we want it and the purpose behind it in our life. And as a result, that opened up this desire to live this long, healthy life. And so it just, those compound upon each other, but those are our top ones.
Yeah, that's amazing. Have your kids shared anything with you? Because obviously I think your daughter would have been what, like 17, 18?
She was younger. She was 14 and our son was 8 or 9 at the time.
I mean, did they have any awareness of what was happening?
So here's a really big one. My calves are tightening as you asked that, and I started thinking back. I had an experience, this whole Wake Up Warrior and Garrett White. I had this experience of being down in Southern California, and my son was doing an internship at their company. And so he's on the beach filming as I'm in the water. It's at night. It's at Lake Paris in Southern California. And I put my head down in the water and I come up out of the water and I'm supposed to share my deepest, darkest secret to get it out. And next thing you know, I'm down in the water and I come up and my son's facing me as an 18-year-old with a camera, but he had set the camera on the beach and he got permission from the coaches. And this had never happened between a father and son in this experience. And he came down into the water and he said, big alligator tears in his eyes. And both coaches were there in the water also. And he said, why did you leave us? Because that was his story, that I left them. But that openness and vulnerability. So again, when he was 8, 9 years old, the story that my wife and I told each other and ourselves was, oh, they're young. We don't need to tell them, they don't know. But what came from that experience down in the water between my son and I was this self-discovery. And then we were able to share it on stage in front of 750 men, this experience of being down in the water and him saying that to me. And one of the life lessons that came from that we shared with everyone was that our kids are always watching. They know. Ben, you and I knew, when we were that age and we saw our parents and we experienced things, good, bad, whatever it was, we had that self-awareness. Why would we think our kids wouldn't? I know I did when I was that age, and my son did. He knew, but I had never told him, my wife had never told him why. And so that gave us the opportunity to then share that with each other, but then share that lesson with the world too, is that our kids know. They know. We think we can hide it from them, but they know something's up. They know something's off. They know something's going on. We try to protect them, try to hide it from them, but that can actually cause more damages. At least that's the clarification that my wife and I got from that whole experience. So that gave me an opportunity to be vulnerable with my son, to open up with him, to share with him. And then that brought us the ability for him to start trusting me again. And I thought that I had gained that back, but it took, another 10 years for us to have that experience, for him to start trusting me again, because I was vulnerable with him and shared with him what was actually going on at the time.
What's the advice that you give parents? I mean, by the way, super powerful. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm having this like live internal realization that we are all just, it's an energy game. I mean, I've said many times on the podcast, this is an energy game, but I've always thought the energy was in terms of that we are just, it was coming in and then it would go out, coming in and going out. And what I'm realizing that we are actually energy accumulators, that our body is this incredible silo of energy that we don't even necessarily know. I'm talking about like your 5-year-old self, that it took until your adult years for you to realize, actually, whoa, you stored some energy back as 5 years old that was incredibly potent. You had no idea how to handle that energy. And then your son, who, innocently enough, was like, just said in terms of, even though it was like, there was that 45-day separation, it was only 45 days. Took that as, why did you leave me? These potent energies that we just think are innocent or harmless at best. And I think that I'm having this realization that, boy, these narratives that we've either witnessed or we don't know how to handle because we're too young, or we don't have the self-awareness to be able to actually transmute that into something. What would you tell parents today to be able to go, now that you know what you know, what would you tell the Michael back in 2010 about, hey, these, not only your own narratives, but how do you actually create a currency exchanger for your own kids, and helping them be able to handle these narratives and stories that are coming in?
Yeah, such a great question. Thanks for asking. We're clear about this as a family. We talk about this right here openly with each other. And especially now that I have grandkids, I pour into my son-in-law in this way, which I'm so grateful that I have this experience. And I'm so excited for my grandson and our granddaughter and whoever else may be coming into our family. But it's this: be real, be raw, and be relevant. Those 3 R's: real, raw, and relevant. Be real means tell the truth. Again, tell the truth to myself so I can then tell the truth to others around me. And then be raw, share that emotion. I cry with my son. I hug my son. I love my son. And I share these emotions and these stories with him. My son, Caden, is joining me in the business, and he'll sit right over here on the desk, and he'll listen to me share. I'm in finance and money and legacy planning and all that, what would the Rockefellers do with Garrett Gunderson? But I have these conversations with my clients. I share this personal story of putting a gun in my mouth so I can be real and raw with my clients, because I want them to feel this, and I want us as a family to be real, raw, and relevant with each other. And so they can have that within themselves, so they don't bottle it up. The body keeps the score. Man, if we bottle it up, it's going to manifest itself somehow in a sickness or an illness or an injury or something somehow. So body keeps the score talks about movement and But it's not just movement in our physical body, it's movement in our voice besides our action. So be real, raw, and relevant.
So someone listening to this today goes, okay, by the way, love the framework. It's super simple, but I think it's in the simple. I want to be clear, does not mean it's easy. My wife and I were just having this conversation. Simple does not mean easy. And sometimes people go, well, it's simple. Well, it should be easy. No. Often simple is hard. Simple is profound. And so someone who is doing that today, like what have you found to be the best first step, right? Because they may go like, ooh, I want to be raw, or I want to be real, raw, and relevant with my partner. And I want to like get this clarity of like what it is that I want. And obviously they've, the person who's listening to this podcast, obviously maybe their partner hasn't and isn't receptive to it. So how would you recommend someone start to integrate this into their life, this real, raw, relevant in ways that are simple and achievable so that they can get the reps in, like, is it true? Where have you found this to be true in the past, right? These simple things, but all that's internal dialogue. So it's really safe to do that. But being real, raw, and relevant is an external, right? Communication, structure, principle, core value.
Yeah. A few things come out for me. Number one, choose your hard. We've heard that before. Choose your hard. It's hard to do this work. We're going to talk about that. But what's harder? Is it harder to not choose it and then go through all the pain and the agony in our life as a result of that could last generations? And then Ben, we in the green room before this, we talked about a strategic coach, and you obviously started with strategic coach and then you became a coach. But I'm sure you also participate and have coaches in your life, correct?
Yes.
Besides coaching others?
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, I do also. And so I haven't done all this work on my own. I've hired coaches and others to assist me with their unique process to guide me through how to get to be real, raw, and relevant in my own life. So that'd be a great place to start, is having a coach that could assist. Because I not only did I read books, but I had to go through experiences myself to experience it, like being in the lake and being down in the water and experience that. I love another thing that we're clear about in our wolf pack is adventurous activities. I love teaching and learning through adventurous activities. It's one thing for you and I to have this conversation. It's another thing for my son and I to hike 2,000 vertical feet up to waterfalls in Yosemite Park and be exhausted after 3 hours and then sit down and eat something together. And in that moment, share something that's real, raw, and relevant and have that stick as a result of being exhausted and sharing something adventurous together. Not that we don't do it here at home in the office, but when we're out there doing an adventurous activity, it helps it stick and ingrains it at a deeper level. So the environment and coaches have been a really big part of that for me in my life.
Yeah. I want to also go back to, you obviously had some plant medicine experiences. So I want to bring this back to that. And I'd said, okay, like what was the impetus for you though to go, I want to try this? Not only that, but that Wendy was on board. I mean, what was the impetus in why?
We went to Peru for our 30th wedding anniversary, like I said, for 4 nights of ayahuasca because of my wife, not because of me.
Really?
Yeah, she wanted to go and I didn't want her to go alone. But then I knew that I would be facing some fears and taking on some things. And so I prepared myself for it. We actually prepared ourselves for 6 months, preparing ourselves mentally, physically, and everything for that experience. And we had some great guides and mentors in our life that assisted us to prepare us for that. But there were some roadblocks. There were some things that just kept reoccurring. And no matter how much work we did on it, we weren't able to, it just kept coming back. Individually, as a couple, mainly individually in our lives, from past childhood traumas and self-worth things and different things like that. And there's science behind this medicine work. There's proven science that it creates new neural pathways. And again, my story and my experience of medicine work is that it puts me into a deep meditative state of mind. And then as a result of having this plant, whether it's psilocybin or ayahuasca in my body, it opens up the ability for me to create a new neural pathway. And what that means to me is a new belief. And so I have this experience. It's deep, it's internal, it's light, like it's lifelike. Like I'm experiencing this in the medicine, the plant medicine, whether it's something from my childhood or that dream that I had when I was 5 years old. And then when I'm in that, I discover what the limiting belief is. I can't trust myself. If I can't trust my parents, I can't trust anybody else, including myself. So I experience that. And then because of the new neural pathways that I'm creating, I then tell myself the story is, I can trust myself. I'm trustworthy. I have plenty of evidence in my life that can back up that I'm a trustworthy person. And then because of that experience in the new neural pathway, that then becomes a new belief moving forward in my life.
And is this all happening literally while you're in the experience? Or is it like you have the experience and now you're unpacking it post the experience? Like, walk us through in terms of how that journey goes until you get to the, man, I now have a new belief.
Yes, both. So there's an integration period. I think Jay talked about this, where he transcribed and then he had to do the work afterwards. The work afterwards is vital to having that stick. And that's working with an integration specialist to discover these things to help make sense of that experience and get to the point where you can unpack and say, yeah, I had this dream, I had this experience. Here's what it meant. Here's my new belief. And then I have a glass wall right over here in my office, and I'll write things down on there to help incorporate that new belief in my life. And then I'll take it into my meditation during the week to ingrain that more. And then if it keeps coming up, maybe I'll do another medicine experience, or maybe I'll do some deep meditation on it. And I need to go deeper to unroot to get to like really the core of it. But it's having the experience itself and then doing the work afterwards to help make it stick. But and that gains clarity, that gives me clarity around what I want and why I want it also. Doing all that work.
Will you do it again?
Yes, but I don't have the desire right now. It's not a no. But yes, I would. I would do it again. It's work, Ben. It's not easy. The ayahuasca part. There's other experiences that you can do that are softer, a little bit more gentle. And I'll do those. I did one back in January this year that was softer, a little bit more gentle. The one that I believe Jay was referencing with you. And those are extremely powerful for me. And you can do that through breathing. Ben, have you ever experienced a breathing technique where you're, and then your body as a result of breathing super fast and kind of like a hyperventilative tight space that you get in, your body will release DMT. Did you know this, that you can do that?
Yeah, well, I knew about the breathing, but I didn't know that it released DMT.
Yeah, it does. And DMT is the main ingredient in ayahuasca that gives you that hallucinogenic experience. But you can do that through breathing. I've experienced it. I've been guided through a breathing journey experience and had that euphoric hallucinogenic experience just from breathing with no medicine whatsoever.
Wow. Do you think there's, I mean, that just makes me think that we are underutilizing our body's internal capacity. I mean, you think about like, I'm about to have a new baby born, and you just think about like from just the interaction between, my wife and I, all of a sudden we create this like new life. I mean, just think about like that, the power, like where did that come from? Right. Just boom, just profound. And then I'm listening to you talk about this. Wait, we see it in the external world, right? Through a plant, getting DMT, but yet we can internally release that. I mean, man, that is pretty powerful. Do you have any recommendations? If someone goes, oh, wow, okay, well, maybe I can actually try that. Do you have any like recommendations for people who go, hey, I want to just try this breathing technique so I can maybe get just maybe a little taste of it, a little sense of like what that might like be like and feel like in a way that feels like within agency and control. Do you have any recommendations of like breathing techniques or books or anything like that that someone could read or follow?
I I don't on the breathing. I'm trying to think who my wife and I were with some friends, and a gentleman there from Phoenix, Arizona. He's actually a firefighter, and he does this in his backyard and guides people through experiences. But I know even here in St. George, Utah, where I live, there's people that Facebook groups that talk about breathing experiences and techniques. I know there's some in northern Utah that I've seen. I think if someone just starts asking about it, they could find one. But I don't have a guided way. Maybe there's stuff online about it. I don't know.
Yeah. So probably my guess is a perplexity.ai search or even like a chat GPT search could like at least start the process of getting to understand that. And so
Mine have always been guided, so I don't know if anyone to send them to. Yeah.
maybe complete this sentence. You might want to actually explore plant medicine if
You're being called to it. My wife reminds me, Ben, that someone must be called to it. They must want to. They must have some sort of calling to it for whatever reason. There's some sort of a limiting belief or roadblock in their life, something that they feel stuck, or they're just looking for more creation, more creativity, and some sort of an experience. And the place that we went to is called Blue Morpho, Hamilton Souther. He's an American. He's been down there over 20 years. And he's my wife and I went there and we felt safe with him. We met him in the United States. He lives down there full time, but it's called Blue Morpho Tours, I believe. Someone could Google it and find it, but it's a safe place for an ayahuasca experience. But you have to travel to Peru to have that experience.
yeah, I so appreciate that. I want to circle back to something you had said in the very beginning of this conversation that really struck me. And I wanted to make sure that we circled back on it was you had said, I discovered the truth about money. And that's such a profound statement and I'm really curious when you said that, what did you mean by that?
I teach, my company's called Vault AIS, and the AIS stands for number one asset, number one investment, number one strategy. So AIS. Number one asset is you, the individual. You are the number one asset. People are assets. Things are not. Human life value is the source and creator of all property value. The I is number one investment. Clients want to know, where do I invest? What do I invest in? And the characteristics for number one investment, the area to take risk. Number one, control. If it's an area where you have control. And number two, an area where you have human life value. So Ben, if you think about for yourself over your lifetime, what's put the most amount of money in your pocket? What's it come from?
It's basically come from my entrepreneurial like gains where I am involved deeply.
Yes, that's exactly right. So newsflash for yourself or everybody else, moving forward, what has and will continue to put the most amount of cash in your pocket is the area where you have control and human life value. Knowledge, experience, and expertise are the three main assets on the human life value balance sheet that I refer to the most. Knowledge, experience, and expertise. Ben, it's your ability to produce as an entrepreneur in your businesses at the highest level that is, and will continue to put not only the most fulfillment in your life, but the most cash, because dollars follow value. So that's the area to take risk. Where do you hedge against inflation? In yourself and your own businesses. Where do you diversify? In your own businesses. So number one investment is your own business or career. Number one strategy, so AIS, number one strategy. What do you do then with cash that you relinquish control of, where you don't have the knowledge, experience, or expertise? You keep it guaranteed, protected, and liquid. And the guarantee and the protection of cash mainly protects your mindset so you can not only enjoy life, but continue to produce at the highest levels in your area of expertise. So again, I didn't have that clarity before, but I have that clarity now, and I help others with that clarity because too many people are gambling. They think they're investing. I thought I was investing. I was gambling. I relinquished control in an area where I didn't have knowledge, experience, or expertise. And I did that because I was getting bored in my own life. I wasn't continuing to grow. I wasn't a lifelong learner. I thought I had arrived. I didn't see myself as the problem or the solution, right? All these life lessons we've talked about culminated and came from all of this and the experience that I had. So if I meet with someone and they have money in these areas outside of their business or outside of their control, that tells me they're getting bored in their own life. They're not continuing to create within themselves. And if they're doing it in their business life, they're doing it in their personal life also. And that's usually with their spouse because they're getting bored with their marriage. So they start looking for the solution outside of their marriage. And yes, I go there with all my clients because their marriage affects, and tell me if you agree differently or if you feel differently, Dan, your marriage will affect your ability to produce in your business.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, and mine is even more so. And the fact is that my wife is also my business partner. And I can tell you when days when we are not on the same line, not on the same page, but like we're not in the same line, I tell you, that affects everything. My energy, my like confidence, my creativity, my productivity. I mean, it is like, and I can feel it like the humidity in the air. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, I've rescheduled a full day of appointments before because I've been off with my wife. So the truth around money is what's true for us, what's true for me, what's true for you, what framework, what belief system do you have around money? And the framework that I discovered after putting the gun in my mouth is AIS. I'm the number one asset. It's okay for me to want what I want. On that whole discussion that we had around taking, filling my cup up to be able to pour something from it. And then where do I invest? Where do I take risk in areas where I have control, knowledge, experience, or expertise? My own career, my own business, writing these books with Garrett Gunderson, writing my own books. That's where I take risk, but I control and have knowledge, experience, and expertise. And then what do I do with money that I relinquish control of? I keep it guaranteed, protected, and liquid, mainly to protect my mindset so I can enjoy life and continue to produce at the highest level. And that's the truth around money for me. And I share that truth with others and invite them to find that truth for themselves.
Yeah. That's a brilliant framework, by the way, Michael. Absolutely brilliant framework. What would you tell someone who maybe doesn't own a business, right? For me, you asked me, and I was like, well, like with me, right? So what would you tell someone who's listening to this who maybe is more of an intrapreneur, who's maybe working within an entrepreneur's world or works for a corporation? How would you apply that exact same sort of framework for them?
Ways that they can increase their human life value and be of more worth. What books are they reading in their career? What creation are they doing within their career that they're taking to their manager or the owner or the person that they report to or answer to in their own business? Are they continuing to feed themselves? Are they excited about their career? Are there ways that they could become excited? If someone gets bored, I'm like, go to a Wake Up Warrior event, go to Tony Robbins event and walk on fire, or do some sort of a self-discovery. Help maintain that though with strategic coach and, to continue to be inspired and around other like-minded individuals like yourself, Ben, or myself, or Garrett Gunderson, or, Garrett Wise, or whoever it is out there in the world that we can continue to feed off of each other and to listen to your podcast and be inspired by that. So there's a lot of things, whether you own your own business or not, that you can do to increase your own personal stock value and be of more value to the person that you're working with or for.
That's just so good, Michael. That is just so good. What are the 5? I'm thinking about like, how can we help people shortcut, right? Like, what are the things that we can help them to shortcut to increase their HLV, right? To get their their wealth, which, by the way, it's one of the reasons why we created our company, Avexia Wealth, and people, because the word actually wealth is broken down into two words, right? When you look at the origin of that, the wheel and th, it means the condition of well-being. That's what wealth actually means. It's not about your balance sheet. So I'm thinking about like, how do we, so Avexia means actually well-being in Greek. But I'm thinking about how can we help people align their AIS? By the way, I think that is one of the most brilliant frameworks, Michael. It's so good because it allows people to be in agency, right? It's not like, oh, they're the problem. My investor is the problem. Right? It's like, no, like I just didn't follow my framework, which I just love. But what are the 3 to 5 books? You've mentioned a bunch of them. And I think the thing that we can control is like what we consume. Like you are what you eat, you are what you watch, you are what you listen to, you are like the culmination of the 5 people you are around, right? Which I just take into account energy. And what are the 5 books that you would say, boy, if these people read this today or over the next 6 months, or the next 12 months, this would help them shortcut to such a greater condition of well-being or wealth that would impact their HLV, right? Which will then have a ripple effect onto the property balance sheets. What would those books be?
Well, I'll put my book at the top.
I was just going to say, feel free to self-promote because, I mean, if people are not listening to this podcast and going, this is worth a read, I got to tell you, think again.
Yeah, thank you. So What We're Worth, I wrote that book. It's a business fable. It's only 90 something pages to help someone at a deep core level take back control of their own life and to ingrain AIS at a deep core level in their own life. That's what that book was written for, to see their worth in their human life value balance sheet and then take that to their property value balance sheet. So What We're Worth. I also have really enjoyed going back and forth with Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand's book, Atlas Shrugged. Les that died, one of my partners that died in a plane crash, he had a photographic memory, and he taught me the most about that book. And I mentioned the famous money speech. Francisco de Anconio, a character in Atlas Shrugged, gave this famous money speech: dollars follow value, seek to create value in the marketplace because dollars follow that. That's a 1,200 page read, but it's a big one, and it's one to continue.
Little more of a tomb.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. The Road Less Stupid that I mentioned, I really like that because that's just a good thinking book. Any books from strategic coach Dan Sullivan, I love all those learning books. You know, his commitment to come out with one every quarter. Those are just so concise and just have so much meat and punch to them. I love so much of Dan Sullivan's learning products and books. Anything on values, anything to help someone gain clarity on values. There's books out there on core values and family values and different things that you can now pull off of AI. I'm sure you do also, but use AI to ask these questions and talk about these, have conversations with AI. I've been doing that a lot with AI and having conversations and discoveries in there and getting so much from that as a result of just from a book itself.
And by the way, if you're listening to us being like, AI has seemed daunting, honestly, just start by saying, what are the questions that you would ask someone starting on a journey of self-discovery, self-awareness, accountability, right? Like, and let that happen. And so anyone who's listening to this, if you want to get started and start having a meaningful internal conversation with an incredible moderator.
Yes. Yeah. And Jay talked about transcribing his journey experiences because of him speaking. I take those transcriptions and put them into AI, and then I have it teach me. So another one of the tools of how to make it stick. What are the top 5 lessons from it? How can I incorporate that into my life? And I get a ton by putting it into AI, my transcriptions, and then asking it questions about that. to incorporate that into my life. Life experiences, life stories, things that we're talking about. Someone listening to this and they're having a thought and they're wondering about this, man, throw it in there and ask.
Yeah. Do you throw your journals, your gratitude journal, your is it true? Where have I found this to be true? And in the past, is there anywhere else? Have you take any of that content and put that in there as well?
Yes.
Oh man. What a rich environment for you to be able to mine and just be able to alchemize into just greater awareness.
Yeah. And Ben, as you say that, and for the listeners, a great place to start would be what works well for me. I calendar, I compartmentalize, I time block. I'm very deliberate about that. I'm up at 5. I'm doing personal study at 5:30. So give yourself a time block of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes that you're going to use AI to do exactly what you're saying. And that works well with my personality to time block that and set timers for that and making it an appointment.
Yeah. And just remember, previous podcasts, I talked about the rule of 100, and the rule of 100 states that if you just spend 100 hours on a particular skill, trade, thinking, mindset, which comes out to 16 to 18 minutes a day, is you will be better than 95% of the rest of the world. So again, to gain expertise does not require hours upon hours upon hours in a week. It's just 16 to 18 minutes a day. That is the difference between good, better, best.
I heard you say that in one of your episodes, Ben, and I really appreciate that. And my interpretation of that in my life for me is because I've committed to this life of lifelong learning, not only does it fulfill me, and I loved hearing that from you because it ingrained in me more that if I'll consistently do that, I'm going to be fulfilled at a higher level. I have more to offer to those around us. And what that does for me is it gives me more courage and confidence in my life, in all areas of my life, because I'll tell you, life has its way of just all of a sudden, something out of the blue coming your way, and it could roll you over. It could smash you. And I've had several of those in my life. And thank God I've had the level of training that I now have, because a few of those have come in the last couple of years with family members. And I've been able to be there, right? The tide rolls out and you'll see if someone's standing there with clothes on or not. And thank God I've had clothes on and be able to stand there firm and to be able to assist and to be of value, especially when it means the most.
I love that. Well, Michael, it's been truly an absolute joy having you on the podcast. Your stories, your real lived experience, and how you've taken that and created such an incredible living operating system is truly inspirational. One of the things, as you know, since you've listened to some of my podcasts, I like to have the guest roll out the last thought, the last ripple, the last word, the last phrase that our audience leaves with. So what do you want our audience to walk away with today?
That you're worth it. If I had to talk to my 5-year-old self, if I could go back and tell him, I would tell him, I'd say, Michael, you're worth it. And I want everybody to know out there listening to this that you're worth it. And if you're feeling it inside in any way, shape, or form, talk to someone, visit with someone. I'm so big, and I know Ben is also, on mental health. And so just know that you're worth it. And if you're hearing this, have hope. And sometimes it's just a day at a time. You go a day, and then you can go a week, and then you can go a month. And then you can start shooting for a big vision that's years and years and years out there. But that's it. You're worth it.
Michael, you're a real gift to this world. I love that message. And again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Ben, thank you. It's been an absolute joy. I've been looking forward to this, and it was extremely fulfilling for me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.